Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this next session at the annual Family Cafe. Our next presenters are James Williams and Haley Buxton.
Hello, everybody. How are we all doing this morning? Are we all excited for the anime connection? Welcome to the Anime Connection, utilizing anime and related media to teach disability awareness. I'm James Williams.
And I'm Haley Buxton.
And today, for the next hour, Haley and I are going to be talking about how you can use anime and related media to teach awareness of different disabilities. Now, why anime? What makes anime a potentially effective tool for teaching awareness of disabilities? Well, first of all, anime is a very common interest among people with disabilities. In fact, as a person who attends many anime conventions with a hidden disability myself, when I go to anime conventions, I come across many people with disabilities, and they are in fact such a significant percentage of the attendees at many anime conventions that those conventions have had to create accommodations for people with disabilities that most of us in the disability community wish every event would offer. Indeed, some of my friends with disabilities have even concluded that the success in accommodating people with disabilities at anime conventions, even though anime is entirely directly related to disability issues, can be used as a model for accommodation at other events. Meanwhile, though, anime is still a very common interest, and, in fact, the psychologist Dr. Shanna Nichols, a very highly respected academic who did a lot of research specific to females with autism, in her clinical work, when she created social and support groups for autistic females of different ages, she discovered that the number one interest of the females with autism she worked with was anime. She even went so far to start calling anime the second language for females with autism in many of her presentations. As a self-advocate, I not just go to conferences like the Family Cafe, I also, when I'm at those anime conventions, host disability awareness presentations at them as well, in order to teach awareness of the issues that the attendees with disabilities also face. Growing up, however, as a person with autism who enjoyed anime, I routinely looked for ways to use anime to teach awareness of my disability. And one thing I noticed was that although people with disabilities might not necessarily be largely represented in anime, that doesn't mean that there are scenarios in anime and characters that do not have tendencies that are similar to people with disabilities. In fact, this one thing I've learned with my passion for anime is just because characters aren't labeled with a disability does not mean, by any means, that those characters don't necessarily have characteristics and tendencies that are shared by people with various disabilities. Now, the first anime that I really enjoyed growing up was Pokemon. Who here likes Pokemon? And watching Pokemon, there were many references to things I could relate to. And as a child with autism, there were often things that I saw differently. Probably the one classic episode I really felt I could relate to for awareness was the very first Pokemon episode where Ash Ketchum oversleeps.
He gets up late, and he rushes to Professor Oak's Pokemon Research Lab, and the only Pokemon remaining is this very cheeky Pikachu.
Yes.
As three other trainers, including Ash's rival Gary Oak, has taken the remaining three starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, so there's no one left but Pikachu.
Absolutely. And see, you know, as a kid with autism, I was never a morning person. I hated getting up early. So, you know, seeing Ash Ketchum struggle growing up, struggle to get up in the morning, oversleeping, I felt like, Ash, I can relate to you. I have a hard time getting up in the morning. And Ash's struggle getting up in the morning is very reminiscent of some of the struggles people with disabilities have if they are not morning people. Another reference that I grew later. If you watch Pokemon, you will learn that one recurring joke in Pokemon is that Brock is always behaving in not so friendly ways to the Officer Jennies and the Nurse Joys.
And other ladies he and Ash and their other friends come across during their journey.
But later on, when I was in high school, I noticed something. A lot of the inappropriate behaviors in Pokemon that Brock engaged in mirrored many behaviors that kids with disabilities were engaging in due to social issues, due to social anxiety, and due to various social disabilities. In fact, many of the behaviors Brock engages in parallel many behavioral issues that my friends went through when I was in high school. And I came to the realization that utilizing those scenarios from Pokemon with Brock's behaviors can be an effective way of teaching people how some people with disabilities might behave, not because they're bad, but because they don't understand due to their disability. Now, Pokemon was one of the first anime series that came to America. And alongside Pokemon came another anime of that time, Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is an amazing superhero. She fights villains, oftentimes with the help of other Sailor Scouts and Tuxedo Mask. But when we first meet Sailor Moon, she's not doing exactly that well in school. If you remember the first episode of Sailor Moon, she didn't do so well on one of her tests. And on that same day, she discovers she's not doing well on a test. She gets approached by a magical cat and becomes Sailor Moon. Now, I'm sure there are many people in this room with disabilities that might be struggling in school, right? School is not always easy when you have a disability. But some of you might have something that you do well in outside of school. You might also do well in a club that is outside of your academics in school. Sailor Moon's example of being a magical superhero who still struggles in school, in my opinion, represents a way you can teach awareness of a person with a disability who might not be doing necessarily well academically in school or might need help, but still has other strengths elsewhere. And now Haley will continue with awareness from a show that is, technically speaking, half anime, but anime related, Miraculous Ladybug.
How many people like the Miraculous Ladybug show? I do. So Miraculous Ladybug is about two teenagers, Marinette Dupin-Cheng and Adrienne Agreste, who are everyday teenagers living in Paris, France. However, what nobody knows about them is that they're superheroes, Ladybug and Cat Noir. They don't even know who the other is because of one reason: Hawk Moth. A bad person who uses a miraculous of his own for evil purposes. Now, the miraculouses are jewelry that are powered by little creatures called kwamis. Marinette is aided by the Ladybug Kwami of creation, Tiki, and Adrienne is aided by the Kwami of destruction, Plag. Now, for reasons unknown until the second season of the show, Hawk Moth is intent on luring out Ladybug and Cat Noir and seizing their miraculous to make a wish that's dearest to him. And to achieve that, he uses his butterfly miraculous to infuse butterflies with negative energy and send them out to people in Paris who are dealing with negative emotions like anger, sadness, fear. Hawk Moth turns these negative emotions into supervillains. These villains go on a rampage throughout Paris, and Marinette and Adrienne must transform, capture the Akuma, and repair any damage done to the city. Now, if you've watched the second season, at the very end, another villain comes into play, Mayura, with the Peacock Miraculous that was mysteriously, as of unknown circumstances right now, damaged. It turns out Hawk Moth is actually Adrienne's father, Gabriel Agreste. And his wife, Emily, used the damaged Peacock Miraculous many times for unknown reasons. It caused her to get sick, and eventually she used it so much that she fell victim to a curse of eternal sleep. Now, unlike Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, true love's kiss can't awaken her. So Gabriel turns to the one thing he knows that can break the sleeping curse, Ladybug and Cat Noir's miraculous, to make the wish and use the absolute power to awaken Emily. Now, there's a price that must be paid for that, but obviously Gabriel doesn't care. Anyway, Marinette and Adrienne attend high school, and when we first meet Marinette, she's romantically attracted to Adrienne. She stutters when she's around him, and she can't form complete sentences when talking to him. That is exactly what a lot of people with disabilities deal with. They have a hard time speaking to those that they have a crush on, and they have a hard time entering friendships and romantic relationships.
Absolutely. You know, one other really powerful awareness tool that can be used with Miraculous Ladybug is the fact that, you know, it's not uncommon, sadly, for people with disabilities to get set up by people, to get taken advantage of in various ways. I mean, I'm sure many people here in the room have had a time when they thought they could trust somebody who took advantage of them, who lied to them, or like said, I'll be your friend if you do this really bad thing, and then thinking that person would be their friend, they might do that bad thing. And, Hawkmoth, what he does is he takes advantage of vulnerable people who are angry and upset and lies to them and pretends he's their friend in return for obtaining Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculouses. And the way he takes advantage of them, the way he pretends to be their friend, is very similar to how many people with disabilities have been taken advantage of too. And so that whole premise of Miraculous Ladybug, that sequence in many episodes where Hawkmoth lures those vulnerable people, can be used to teach awareness of some of the vulnerabilities that people with disabilities sometimes have. We will have questions answered in the next part of our presentation. Be patient, but we'll be able to answer your question, all right? Now, in more recent years, a very popular anime has come out. And what's really nice about this anime is, here you have an anime where pretty much the entire basic storyline is a parallel to having a disability. Who here is familiar with My Hero Academia? It is a super popular anime series. And My Hero Academia, the entire premise of that anime is a parallel to having a disability. It is set in a world where everyone is a superhero with superpowers. In that world, if you are a human being, you are expected to have superpowers. But it tells the story of one specific character who does not have superpowers, and the struggles he faces being stigmatized because he doesn't have superpowers. And he is made to feel inferior to everyone around him that has superpowers. He feels ashamed of the fact that he doesn't have superpowers. Now, interestingly enough, he slowly finds out that several of those people with superpowers are actually sacrificing part of their well-being for their superpowers. But the shame he goes through, that sense of inferiority, of not having superpowers, really parallels the experience of so many people with disabilities who have an inability to do something that most non-disabled people can do, who have that sense of shame where they can't do something in a world where most people can. It could be not being able to see as well, hear as well, walk as well, not having the same social skills. It's not always easy when you have a disability and can't do something most other people can do. And My Hero Academia parallels that entire situation by telling a story of someone who's non-disabled, yet in that world where everyone has superpowers, he is considered disabled. Also, too, remember what I said about how one of those superheroes was sacrificing their well-being? Some people with disabilities sometimes sacrifice their well-being, sometimes trying to pretend to be non-disabled or having a lesser form of your disability in order to hide that shame can take a toll on your well-being. And those experiences in that show can parallel some of the struggles that people with disabilities have when they try to, if they choose to, hide aspects of their disability. Haley will now continue with connections from a show that is not anime, but is very well loved by anime fans alike, the Disney film Frozen.
How many of you have seen the Frozen duology? Well, the Frozen duology tells the story of Princess Anna and her older sister, Queen Elsa. Elsa, for reasons that we find out in the second film, was born with ice magic. She can create snow piles, turn a room into an ice skating rink, or even freeze over an entire kingdom and place it under eternal winter. And that's exactly what she did in the first film. At the age of 21, Elsa becomes the new queen of their kingdom of Arendelle. Elsa and Anna had an accident when they were little girls where Elsa accidentally zapped Anna in the head with her ice magic, and Elsa has been taught to suppress her powers ever since, and that comes back to bite her in the butt when she reveals her powers after an argument with Anna at the coronation ball. And so Elsa runs away, and Anna must team up with a mountain man named Kristoff to find her. A lot of people with disabilities go through struggles that Elsa went through. Not necessarily magical powers, but it's implied that Elsa had like OCD and some other type of hidden disability. The Frozen films basically represent the hidden struggles that individuals with disabilities may go through.
Absolutely, and in fact, one common theme found in anime, and this actually is a reflection of basically Japanese cultural values and also kind of how, broadcasting and censorship rules work in anime. The Japanese have a very strong line in their work between fantasy and reality, and as a result, permit a lot of lessons and allegories in their fantasy anime. So in fact, there are many anime series where fantasy entities are used to teach awareness of different issues. Now, probably one of many of these examples, who here is familiar with the anime Fruits Basket? Now, in Fruits Basket, a young woman, for various reasons, ends up living with this family known as the Somas. Now, the Somas have a very interesting curse that, when you think about it, kind of relates to tactile sensitivities. The Somas, for some reason you don't know until later in the series, turn into different animals in the Chinese zodiac if they are hugged by someone of a different gender than theirs. Now, who here is sensitive to people touching them? Who here does not necessarily like to be touched? Now, obviously, you may not become an animal if someone hugs you, but that whole fanciful concept of having something happen to you when you are touched like in Fruits Basket, can possibly be used as an allegory to tactile sensitivities. At the same time, although, sadly, there are not many characters in anime that openly have physical disabilities, that doesn't mean that there are not situations in anime and characters that go through situations similar to situations that people go through with physical disabilities. Probably one example of this, which is not just a reference to a physical disability, but also a reference to people who were not born with their disability, but acquired their disability through an accident or a traumatic event. Because there are some people out there who are born non-disabled, but then an accident occurs that sadly causes them to have a disability. And that is the classic anime series Full Metal Alchemist. Anyone know Full Metal Alchemist? In Full Metal Alchemist, two brothers who are born able-bodied and born non-disabled get very physically injured due to an alchemy accident, are forced to live with prosthetic metal devices because of that accident. They were not born disabled or born with those issues, but because of that accident, they have to live the rest of their lives with various prosthetic body parts. Their story, despite being set in a fantasy world with magical alchemy, parallels the experiences of many people with disabilities who either have physical disabilities, rely on prosthetic body parts, and or have acquired a disability due to an accident at different times in their life. Another anime that also should be taken into consideration. Who here is familiar with Cells at Work? Anyone familiar with the series Cells at Work? Cells at Work is an anime that may not be as well known as, say, Pokemon or Sailor Moon, but Cells at Work is a beautiful anime series that teaches awareness of issues that some people with disabilities don't always have access to learn about. Cells at Work is a show about the human body. And for many people with disabilities, we live with bodies that work differently than non-disabled people. And sadly, some people with disabilities don't always have access to educational materials where they learn alongside their peers the functions of their bodies. Cells at Work is an anime series that, through anthropomorphic characters involving blood cells, different organs, and different parts of the body, people can learn about how the body works. And I can tell you, when I was in high school, due to my autism, my IEP team did not allow me to take health class in person because they determined I would not be able to function properly due to my autism. Watching that anime series, I actually got to learn many things. Although I had learned them elsewhere and did take health class online, there were many things in that show that my peers learned in health class. Luckily, the school gave me the ability to take that class online. But Cells at Work is a great show to help people with disabilities learn more about their bodies and how they might be different than the bodies of non-disabled people. Another anime that I shall mention. Who here is familiar with? And this is a genre of anime known as slice of life. Most people think of anime, they think, the fantasy stuff, like Pokemon, Sailor Moon, and I've talked a lot about, the fantasy stuff, but there's another genre of anime known as slice of life. And one slice of life anime that I think really binds people with disabilities together is the anime series Peach Girl. Anyone know about Peach Girl? Peach Girl is an anime series about bullying in Japanese high schools. It is a slice of life anime set in a Japanese public high school about a girl who likes to swim, has tan skin for it, and is bullied for it. And what I like about this series is it portrays a lot of the ways that high school kids in Japan bully each other, and how bullying issues in Japan differ than in America, but in many ways how they are the same. Lots of people with disabilities experience bullying at some point in their lives. And what I like about the show Peach Girl is that that's a show that people with many disabilities can use to help others understand the bullying that they go through. Because in the end, if there's one thing all these anime series and all these shows we've talked about have in common is when you watch a TV series regarding a fantasy world, you are the outsider. You are always the outsider looking in to the fantasy world. And as an outsider, you may and likely will feel sorry for people who are being judged in that fictional world. Whether it's Hermione Granger being picked on as a mudblood in Harry Potter, whether it's trainers in the Pokemon series being picked on for not having the best Pokemon.
Or in Miraculous Ladybug, where Marinette is bullied by the resident bully Chloe Bourgeois and the serial liar Lila Rossi. Ugh.
You are the outsider in these worlds. As you are not part of those worlds, you are often more able to sympathize with the underdogs and those who are misunderstood. And therefore, we can hopefully be, by being outsiders in those worlds that tell stories related to the issues people go through in our world, many people can develop a sense of compassion for people in those worlds, even if they don't necessarily understand issues that their real-life counterparts go through in our world. This is another reason why anime can be such an effective tool in teaching awareness for people with disabilities. For this next second part of our presentation, rather than doing a traditional question and answer session, we're going to open the floor to you guys. There are many people in this room with disabilities who have different anime series that they love and they might enjoy. Anime series they might feel relate to them. Some of you might have probably figured out how to use an anime series that Haley and I have not mentioned yet regarding disability awareness.
There is one, Naruto.
Exactly. So now we turn the floor to you, and Haley and I will take turns addressing what you share. What anime series impacted you in your life? How have you used those anime series to teach awareness about your disability?
Hi, I'm Danica. I'm autistic. This is not really an anime, more like a show, cartoon show. Have anybody heard of Winx Club? Winx Club. I'm very big fan of one of my favorite ones of the main cast girls, named Techna, the fairy of technology. I felt a connection to her. She's awkward, she likes technology, she's smarter than the rest of the girls. She's very advanced technologically. And plus she always has short hair, in which I can't understand why all the girls have like long hair. And I always think of her, like my sister. And then another thing is from Evangelion, from Rim, the android who cannot feel anything and had to be destroyed every time she gets hurt. My hat's off to you guys.
There's one over here.
Hi, I'm Faith Marie Boyer. I just like Naruto because it's my favorite. My animes about villains, and I like Sasuke. Well, actually, Naruto was a baby after Nighttail's Fox, and he's like, happened to him, and he's like, fell in love with Hinata, and he got married. After he was in Naruto, is my favorite anime in the universe. Thank you.
I think that a lot of what Faith likes about the evil anime characters is their power and their strength, and something that is often lacking to people with disabilities in the world is that power that they have and that strength that they have.
Before the next question starts, I will now be playing a song from Naruto. Sorry about my mask getting in the way of my music. Anyone else?
So I'm not sure if this counts as an anime, but one of my favorite shows is Steven Universe. And what I like about the show is the fact that it covers a broad spectrum of characters with a variety of disabilities, including autism, bipolar disorder, OCD. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember another one. I think I've mentioned autism too. Schizophrenia is another one too. Anyway, if anybody hasn't seen Steven Universe, I highly recommend it.
No, Steven Universe is an amazing show. I'm a big fan of Steven Universe, and one thing I like about Steven Universe is it not only teaches awareness of different disabilities, it is one of those shows that actually uses a fantasy element in order to enable people to be more accepting of friendships they wouldn't necessarily be accepting of. Like if you notice, Steven Universe, he's a boy who, as a superhero, he fights villains with these 3 adult women who call themselves the Crystal Gems. And, you know, there are many kids with disabilities who relate better to adults instead of other children. And, however, in our society, we stigmatize adult-child friendships. We discourage them. But in Steven Universe, it's considered okay for Steven to have those interactions with those adults because they are not human females. They are crystal gems. And what I think is amazing is that that whole concept of the fact that these humans are something different, enabled the portrayal of adult-child interactions that are valued so much by so many kids with disabilities to be seen as acceptable within that show. Next up.
An anime that I like is Duncan Rompa. It's about 16 students that get trapped in a school with Monokuma, and it makes me, and they have to like kind of fight to get out. It kind of reminds me of what we have to do for my little brother, because we have to keep fighting, because nothing really works and everyone doesn't really want to help because he's disabled.
You can address that too. Do you have anything to share?
As a person with a disability myself, I kind of feel oppressed. Like, nobody listens to me. And I have to fight to be heard. I haven't watched that show yet, but I'll take it into consideration and see if I can relate to those students.
Oh.
It's not really an animated movie. It's really a show about a girl. Her name was Helen Keller, and she overcame her disability with blindness by the help of her assistant, Anne Sullivan. And I really liked that show.
No, the story of Helen Keller is an amazing story.
She was a real person.
And see, one of the beautiful things about Helen Keller's story is that Helen Keller was not able to see or hear. And what makes that so disabling is that we live in a world that is based on the assumption that most people can either see or hear, and most inputs and most things that society expects people to be able to do to function involve either hearing or sight. And if there's anything we can learn about the story of Helen Keller, it's that disabilities aren't just about what a person's limitations are based on body differences or what they're born with. They're just as much about how society limits people based on how society builds itself, assuming that most people have certain abilities.
Are you two by this case familiar with the legend of Korra?
Yes?
Well, in the legend of Korra, it's about this girl named Korra who has the ability to bend 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and the 4th one that she's unable to bend is air. And she's by this ends up having a few problems. And where one of them where she ends up getting distracted. And also another time, she had just snuck away in the middle of the night and joined a team called the Fire Ferrets. And by this case, she took the place of one of the fire ferrets that dropped out. But she by this case kept on getting fouled for doing the wrong things. But that was when until she managed to use one particular element, which was water. And while fighting another team, she by this case started doing this weird dance by this case on the edge of the platform, which turned out in her training with her mentor, Aang, who was the boy who was trapped in the ice for more than 100 years. It turns out she basically started using that movement to avoid the other team's elemental attacks. And so she quickly managed to finally bend the element air. Now she could, by this case, bend 4 elements.
Absolutely. And see, the show you mentioned, Aang, the boy trapped in ice, there's a really amazing awareness lesson in that story, because Aang, in that series, he gets thawed after being frozen in ice for a long time. Chronologically, that makes him pretty old. But he's still a young boy who often has struggles that other boys his physical age often have. Many people with disabilities often find that they aren't always able to accomplish certain tasks or do things they're expected to do because of their age. I can't tell you how many times as a kid my parents would say, "You're this years old, you're that years old, you should know better, you should be able to do this, you should be able to do that," when because of my disability I couldn't. And likewise, just because Aang is over 100 years old because he was frozen in ice doesn't mean that he has the skills of a mature old person. He's still a kid and goes through issues other kids go through.
Well, for me, the anime I grew up with and enjoy very much is an anime for heroes, My Hero Academia. I admire that anime very much because it goes about a main character who was born without a quirk. And it reminded me of how the fact that there are always going to be some people who are pushed down by society just because they don't have something everybody else does. And the way that All Might chose him as the next user of One for All made me see that sometimes people can't, that dreams can be true if they have the aspiration to do it. That's all I got to say, folks.
Well, if you were here earlier, I actually talked quite a bit about My Hero Academia, so I completely agree with that. I am now going to play one more song now that I've solved my masked music issue, the theme from Steven Universe, and then I'm going to open the last, I think, 5 to 6 minutes to general questions. Do we have any general questions?
Well, mine not general, but my favorite is Wonder Woman, 1941. She had extra, she just had skills and she could do anything. You know, and I tell people with disabilities, I have several, but I got mine at an older age. And you can accomplish anything you want to do in life. You don't let the disabilities stop you. I'm a teacher. I'm an interpreter. I'm a PDF specialist. I'm a curriculum specialist. I work for the Navy. And I tell people, guess what? Just because you have a disability, don't let it stop you. Achieve your goals.
Well, I gotta say, I won't name their name, but a very wise member of the cafe's very own Florida Youth Council once said, regarding the fact that most of us are going to grow old someday, there are two people in this world, people with disabilities and people who probably someday will have a disability.
What you guys were talking about the animes, one of my favorite animes I can remember was One Piece, because one of the pirates that I know of, Monkey D. Luffy, have some similar characteristics I might be related to. Like, let's say that I may be like a hyper guy, much like Luffy is, and there are just something about his emotions on certain aspects. Like, usually his excited self, let's say his anger self for the most part, and some stuff. There were just some things that I could relate to for some of the guys, like, let's just say, like, I know about certain directions that some, like Zoro, have a bad history of directions, that they just don't know where they're going. Like, wait, is this supposed to be the right way? And some that might have trauma, like Robin from the Buster Call, that resulted in the loss of her home and some of the stuff. And there are just some things I can relate to for some characters. Like, if I don't know these characters, I don't learn anything about what I am related to based on my disabilities and my autism. Some things that I might not be able to understand today if I had known.
Well, I think we have time for one more, and then it'll be time, and then that'll give the tech team a little time to transition to the live stream.
Hi, I was actually watching you guys up in my room, and I wanted to make sure I came down. I wanted to say thank you very much. I'm an older gentleman. I was not diagnosed ever, and my children have autism, and I have those same situations. when I was watching anime, where I was watching shows like The Eighth Man and Speed Racer. So to let you know how old I am, I'm almost 60 years old. I still watch cartoons. I can still animes. I enjoy them very much. I want to thank you guys so much for being here, to be able to speak to everybody here and let them know that, you know, you can do anything. I was a police officer, and I've worked in law enforcement my entire life. And I just think that you guys can, everybody can just do anything if they set their mind to it, okay? Nobody can tell you you can't do it. I didn't have the support that we now have and that we're able to give our kids to let them know. And it's just so important, guys, that you're here and you're here to do this stuff. I just want to thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you all for coming. We got a little more time before the exhibit hall closes. Be sure to check out my exhibit hall table. I have CDs of my music and books for sale. Otherwise, I'm James Williams.
And I'm Haley Buxton.
And thank you for coming to the Anime Connection.